I want to welcome Walter Robb this morning from San Rafael, California, joining us. And let me just say, I think Walter probably doesn't need an introduction to anybody here. He is one of my dearest and closest friends, in the interest of full disclosure. He's been one of the real keepers of the soul of the natural products industry for a very long time. Walter was, like all of us, an early startup guy himself, struggled to make ends meet. He's got a incredible story. But at Whole Foods, but also for the industry at large, he's really been more of a conscience, I think, in recent years, reminding us of our mission, our purpose, our ethics. And so it's so wonderful that Walter's going to begin our day by talking about leadership with heart. One last personal note, besides being an amazing grandfather and father, and now new husband, Walter got married to the amazing Danielle in December. Walter would be too humble to tell you this, but he went through a pretty rough bout with the coronavirus and had most of us who know and love him pretty much on edge. A really rough 3 weeks, fever, hospital, the whole damn thing. And so I am especially happy, Walter, to have you here, healthy and well, and I turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks so much, my friend. I appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. 19, what'd you say, 19 time zones, Gary?
17 time zones.
Oh my goodness sakes. All right. Yeah, that's good. Well, a good day to everybody, and or good evening or good middle of the night, whatever the case may be. I thought I'd just start this morning with kind of this thought about how are you, take a temperature check on yourself. How are you actually feeling right now? These are unprecedented times, like we've been talking about over the last day or so. And we've never seen such dislocation. And so you could be feeling everything from terror to excitement. I don't know. It's probably a mixture between, for each of you, probably different. But into that space that sits between terror and excitement, the fear that comes from a dislocation like we've not seen in our lifetime, and the excitement that comes from sort of some sense that there's an opportunity out there still to do something, which is what all you're doing with your pitches today. There's a white space, and in that space is where leadership comes, and that's what we're going to talk about this morning, is leadership. And look, it comes in many shapes and sizes. Everybody probably has their own definition of what it is, but the take I'm going to go this morning a little bit about is leading from the heart, and what that means for me, and sharing some experiences with you about that. I hope that they're helpful. So I sort of have 7 points I'd like to share about leading from the heart, and let's get cracking on them. Number one, really, around leadership is that it comes with a vision. Really essential to have a vision. And let me just check, Gary. Can everybody see me? Is it all good? Keep going.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Leaders have visions, and you think back to you come back to this idea of a leader being able to describe kind of which way we're going, which hill are we going to take, what are we trying to accomplish. Many of you that pitched yesterday in various shapes and forms were able to lay out kind of what your hope was. Phil with the African Grain Company sort of saying, I've wanted to bring a renaissance of appreciation for foods from Africa. Different ones of you in different ways said that. But really the role of a leader of heart in particular, is to lay out a big picture idea of what matters in all of the endeavor. Why does the business exist? What is it trying to accomplish? And then that is what inspires the other people in the company to go with you, to be there for more than a paycheck, to be there for something that really matters, make a difference with their life. And so along with that vision, and you see it in various forms every day with different leaders, and or not, as the case may be, coming depending on your point of view out of the White House right now, comes along a set of values, which are really values or things that you believe, that you hold dear, that help guide those, provide the guide rails for your vision, provide the guidelines for how you're going to make decisions. Visions or values are things that you believe deeply, like integrity or character or whatever your values may be, that guide that vision. And conviction is so important. That is to say, how much do you actually believe? Because people, again, are going to believe, they're going to feel your heart in the vision that you express. and they're going to come along and be part of that because they're going to feel that with you. Now, I describe something what I call the big room. The big room is in any company, in any situation, was when the real conversations being had and the real decisions are being made. And what I found is that leaders, I call them tier 1, tier 2. Tier 2 leaders, and I found myself in this tier 2 early on, which was that leaders have an opinion about what's being said, right? They have an opinion. They'll say, I think this about that. I think this about that. But the tier 1 leaders are those who say, this is the way we're going to go. This is the way, this is what we're going to do. I had a good example for you recently of a company in LA that I really like, a CEO called Sam Polk, and the company's called Every Table. And their mission was to, they have a cloud kitchen, they make food, they distribute it to various of their own outlets in Los Angeles. Well, as you can imagine, they all got shut down. And what happened was that they had this facility, they got a call from the mayor's office, and they had the opportunity to serve the homeless were going to come off the streets and go into a shelter hotel, as well as the seniors who had no access to fresh, healthy food. So what Sam did in a moment of leadership, he basically told his company, our business was this over here, and now we're going to go over here. And all he had to do was say, that's the vision now for wherever Every Table is going. And away the team went, and they've done an excellent job executing against that vision. And so, again, this idea that you have a clear statement about why you're in business, why it matters, what the values are that do that. That is the stuff that pulls on people's heart, that engages people's heart, that gives an organization a heart, that beats, ultimately, if you do it well, with one heart around trying to accomplish those objectives in the world. You watch Angela Merkel in Germany here when she stands up to speak, and she speaks and says that if any German is going to challenge with this virus, we're all going to feel it. We're in this together. That's the sort of voice of a leader, giving clear vision to this idea. We're going to stay on this until we complete, and we're going to do it together. And we're going to do it because I care about each and every one of you. That, and of course, vision is so important for a leader to express where we're trying to go. And ultimately, no one can do that exactly like the leader, because you are the leader, you are typically the founder, and it must come from there, even though it's going to take shape through the actions of the entire team. So vision and values and conviction, point number 1 for a leader of the heart, and why it matters so much. Number 2 is really people. What you realize is that it's all about people. It's all about people. In a business, you cannot do it all yourself. At some point, if you haven't realized that, you will realize that the Charles Schwab said recently in an interview with David Rubenstein, he said, Rubenstein asked him, what's the one thing you've taken away from all your years of success in business? He said, it's the incredible feeling of putting a team together and accomplishing something together. It is truly all about the people. Let me tell you how I learned that lesson early on in my career. I had my little store that Gary said, 1978 was my first store. Gary was making yogurt. Other people were doing things, but I was starting a little small store of 1,000 square feet. And we were running behind, and one of my cashiers, Laura Albert, said, you drive down to the produce market every week. You drive in the middle of the night. You drive all night. You come back. You're exhausted. Why don't you talk to my husband, Hank, and see if he can help you with that, and maybe you can take the load off a little bit. So I said, okay. I met Hank. We made arrangements for him the next Thursday to drive with me down to the produce market. I can never forget this moment the rest of my life. This was such a formative moment. Many of you on this call who are so young, or at least young for me and Gary, are having these moments now that you may not even realize are going to shape your philosophy and your approach as a leader, your being as a leader. Anyways, at 9 o'clock on that following Thursday night, Hank Albert walked in the back door, and I'll never, ever forget this moment. The door opened, he came in, he had a new, what's that work clothing, Oshkosh, or I don't know, the work clothing, it's got some sort of a name. He had a thermos with his coffee. He had a new set of work clothing, he had a cap, and he had a look in his eye that told me that just how important this work was, how important this job was. And in that moment, I realized that I had what meaningful work meant to people, and how not having that affected their confidence in being as a person. But more importantly, I realized my responsibility as an employer. I only had 12 employees at that time, hard enough to meet the payroll. But I realized in that moment the responsibility that I had as an employer to that individual to create a workplace just and may not have been fully formed, but of course it's shaped in the values of Whole Foods over the years with team member happiness and excellence, and a focus on realizing you take care of your team members as a leader and they take care of your customers. That story, that experience shaped me forever of a sensitivity and an appreciation for a team. And you just can't do it without a team. And another story for me later in years on the executive team, there were 6 of us. There was one who I just did not get along with, and I struggled to get along with. And I finally got so frustrated as being as a type A, I just went around this person and did it anyways. Well, that blew up on me, and I got called on it. And there was a moment of where I had to go back to this individual and apologize and said, you know what, I realized that I should not have done this. I should not have gone around you. And I apologized. And the realization then, not only then, was that when you're part of the team, you're part of the team and you stick to that, but also that in a team, what it means is that different ones have different skills and that you don't have to do it all yourself. And the beauty of it is that you can rely on different ones in the team to do the different functions. As a result, be a far more productive company. And so what I would say to you after nearly 40 years as a grocer and 40 years as a leader, that my number one realization to share with you today is that when I now look at people in whatever setting I'm in, and many times I'm working with CEOs to help them think through kind of their path forward, is that when I look at a person, what I see is a jewel. I see someone who's waiting to unfold, that only requires the leaders to create a space for them so they can step into who they are and step into their full potential. And I have realized that so profoundly in so many ways that if I looked at a person before as a unit of production or as even just a member of the team, what I see now is nothing but pure potential. And my job as a leader is to open up a possibility so that person can express their full potential. That is my greatest learning as a leader. And I believe that's the greatest way to create the potential of a company, and a company with true heart. I want to move now to the third point about leadership, which is the importance of both collaboration and confrontation. Now, I was raised in a family where we didn't fight a lot, and my mother was kind of in charge. Even if I didn't like the squash or something, I just put it under the table to the dog rather than tell her I didn't like the squash. But I went to my first Whole Foods meeting, and John Mackey and Chris is a dear friend who was the president of Whole Foods at that time. This was the first meeting I'd ever been at where people actually yelled at each other. I mean, literally like yelled at each other. And I was so unprepared for that literally after the meeting, I went outside and I cried because I couldn't handle that level of confrontation. Now, what I learned later was it wasn't personal. It's just kind of the way those fellows went at it. But I just had no appreciation. I had no ability to empathetically. It broke my heart to see people talk to each other that way. And it wasn't something I could. So I spent a long time talking to Chris about it. And what I've learned over the years is that it's okay constructively to have, and it's necessary to have this sort of confrontation in a company to be healthy, which is to say, if you don't examine these questions directly, you're just going to beat around the bush for a while. Where the line gets drawn is when people do it destructively, where they do it in a way that takes people down or it makes it personal. But when you do it in a way that's powerful in terms of being just directly honest, what you find on the other side of that is just a new clarity and appreciation for one another. So collaboration, I think we all know how that works, which is that the joy that comes from celebrating and working with another person alongside. And my friend Ogwe Iguodala, who played basketball for the Golden State Warriors during their championship run, in fact, was MVP of the league and a couple of years ago, now plays for the Miami Heat, writes in his book, which is, by the way, it's called The Sixth Man, a great read, in the last chapter, what happens when people retire? What do they miss? They miss being in the locker room. They miss being riding the bus. They miss being part of the team. They miss all that. And they miss being part of the team, which is part of being human. And what we're seeing in this Zombie age right now is that this is great. We can do the seminar and there's lots of things and we can drink cocktails virtually and all that. And this is the story on retail in general, is that, you know, what really is that we miss the ability to connect with one another, which is what we're wired to do as human beings, is to be one with one another and share and connect and appreciate and so forth. But in any case, this power both collaboration and confrontation. You need both, and you need to do both with heart, genuine heart. To be a leader of heart is you need to understand and appreciate that you need collaboration and you need confrontation in a healthy, constructive way. That leads me to the idea of culture and the importance of culture. It really should be on your balance sheet. It's probably not, because the bean counters haven't recognized, but any company that you respect out there has got a strong culture. You can't take another culture from another company. You can take ideas. It comes from the founders. It comes from all of you. It comes from the reason that you started the company. It comes organically from that, and you build it, but you have to work on it conscientiously as a leader. I define culture as how customers feel shopping with you and how team members feel working for you. And it is the sort of petri dish in which the company unfolds. It's where the people live. It's where the humanity of a company is. It is how people feel. It's a living, breathing thing. It's moving in every moment. And I'll give you an example. Culture can...
Walter, sorry, just to time check. It's 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, I won't make that, Gary, but I'll do the best I can.
Oh, no, we got a tight day. I gotta.
Well, let me keep going then. So at the end of when the Katrina hurricane hit in New Orleans, one of the things we did was quickly to let folks know their job was covered through the end of the year, and to tell them we were going to say every day until we found all 830 team members that were displaced as a result of the storm. And so my point about culture is that you now know what it is, but it's the decisions that you take every day. It's the practices that you put in place that support that. It could be at UNFI, for example, they have some sort of a raggedy bear that they hand out every month to the team member. It's the stupidest little thing, but it's a cultural practice for UNFI. And it's the investments you continue to make in things that help bring the culture together. For example, Whole Foods, we started a leadership academy to have the leaders go back through and understand what it means to run a business from values. Now there's cultural warriors that have been set up to help support that culture throughout Whole Foods. Okay, the qualities of a leader, point number 5, they start with things like humility, resiliency, agility, curiosity. The search firms are now saying the predictive qualities for a successful CEO are curiosity and agility. Clearly, we understand resiliency in these times, right? If you can't stick it through, but agility in terms of your ability to pivot left and right. We've talked a lot about that the last couple of days. And the courage, which Abraham Lincoln described as not the absence of fear, but the ability to go forward even if there is fear. So the qualities I want to talk about most are just authenticity and vulnerability. Authenticity and vulnerability. These are not things you can fake, but these are things that come from you trying to lead from directly who you are as a person. And so you can't lead like Gary, you can't lead like me, you have to lead like yourself. And as you get older, you become to appreciate more that you come to accept yourself more. It's harder when you're younger, you're harder on yourself, but you learn to lead from that place. If you can't be a leader who can be vulnerable and expose yourself so that people can see you're someone who's experiencing life just like they are, it's going to be very hard for them to follow you. And so it takes time to learn this, but just this idea of sharing vulnerably, being open about the struggles that you're going through, even right now as a leader, trying to make decisions, sharing that with people in a constructive way is what a leader of the heart does. Finally, my last 2 points. Number 6 is really around humanity. Albert Schweitzer said that in every moment we move ourselves forward by determining whether we display true humanity to one another or not. And what he meant by that is that in every moment, and no one's perfect, you have a decision as a leader whether you're going to lift somebody up and increase the humanity of the world, or you're going to take them down, or you're going to do sideways. And so having that sort of standard for yourself, the standard of humanity in your business, and recognizing there is nothing more human than business, nothing more human than business. We are working with people every day, customers, team members, all of our stakeholders. This idea of holding yourself to the possibility of creating greater humanity in the world, which is sorely needed through business, would be a thought for you to carry as we go through the day to day. And finally, love. Love not in the gutter sense, but love in the agape sense, love in the sense of truly, truly caring for one another. You can't be a leader of the heart unless you truly care for people. If you're genuinely interested in people, check your radar on that and just your motivations, your care for people, your love of people. For me personally, I just am so intensely interested in people and what makes them tick and how, how they work and what they're thinking about, so that that you can really lead from that place of genuinely caring for people, and creating a feeling. We don't talk enough about love in business, but we should. There's no reason we can't talk about love in business. No reason we can't create a feeling of love and care in our business. And ultimately, a leader of the heart is concerned about or trying for to accomplish that sort of feeling in their business. Let me close with this quote from Albert Schweitzer. Again, you could tell he was a huge influence in my life. Albert Schweitzer gave everything up at the age of 30 to go back to medical school and run a hospital in Africa the rest of his life. And for me, as a young man trying to figure out what to do with my life, here's a guy that put it all on the line for what he believed to be true. And he summed it all up in terms of this quote that's on your screen right now. The purpose of human life is to serve and to show compassion and the will to help others. In the end, when you check your work every day, at the end of the day, and this is what I do, you're going to sleep and you're saying, you try to inventorying, where did I show up? Did I show up with ego, or did I show up in service to others? Did I show up with thinking about myself, or did I show up about the great good, how I could bring more love and humanity to the world, and to my business, and to my team members? And so those are 7 thoughts. I hope that they're helpful about leadership. Comes in many forms, but leading from the heart in the end is the deep one, the one that creates the greatest connection and the greatest human potential, and the potential for love and humanity in business. So with that, Gary, I'll give it back to you.
That was spectacular. What a beautiful way to start our day.